that will allow users to receive a refund from their contributions. Our goal is to add the ability to refund people that contributed and create event triggers and handlers. Our code currently looks like this. We have the contribute action, the contract address hello action, and we will eliminate the hello action. We don't no longer need it. The MK functions around here. There you go. Now, in this lesson, our focus will be to work with the contribute action that currently is this code right here. Now, let's add the ability to refund. At this moment, we do not provide a mechanism to pull out the money users have sent to the contract. What we will do next is to automatically refund users' contribution after some slot has passed in the blockchain. In order to set up that automatically, we will make use of event triggers and event handlers. Let's introduce each of these concepts by using both an event trigger and an event handler. We can subscribe the user's wallet to react to certain events involving the smart contract of the blockchain state. He will use them to return a user contribution after some slot has been reached. Event triggers. An event trigger is a tool provided to us to define when certain actions must take place. For example, we would like the user's wallet to take some action when the wallet in the contract exceeds some specified amount, or take an action when some deadline has been reached. We will go with the latter. Let's set up an event trigger that will fire when the current slot is greater than 15. So, here we have refund trigger that is of type event trigger, and the definition of the function is like this. This is a simple trigger, an expression of type event trigger by using a slot range t. Function, we create a value of this type. We only have to provide it a slot range value of which we wish to dispatch the event trigger. In our case, we want to dispatch the trigger when the current slot is greater than or equal to 15. So we use the interval from function that allows to construct such a slot range. It is important to note that the trigger will dispatch for each slot that satisfies this condition. The action will be run once for each block where the condition holds. For example, register slots T range interval 3 to 6 causes the trigger to be fired at blocks 3, 4, and 5. Now that we have an event trigger, we need an event handler. Event handlers allow us to set up what actions are due to be performed when the condition specified by the trigger is met. In this case, we want to refine users that send money to the contract. That's why our event handler should do. So the code here is a little bit like this. We have here the refund handler that is type, it's a monad wallet, takes a transaction ID and returns an event handler. Now, the definition is, let's do some logging here. Let's create the redeemer script that just returns everything and the range. We have here the redeemer script. Now the range where this is valid, and also the collect from script. Let's see what is going on here. Our refund handler expression is a function that expects a value of type transaction ID right here. And this is the transaction ID of the contribution the user made to the contract to return an event handler that executes in the context of a wallet action. In the definition, we use the event handler data constructor to build a valid event handler. we pass to it a lambda expression, and its only argument is the event trigger. It's the event trigger that causes this handler to dispatch. We don't care about it, and that's why we ignore it with the underscore. This lambda expression should return the action that the handler is supposed to run. In this case, we log a message out and define some local expressions, a redeemer script, and a range. We need both of these things to create a transaction that will allow us to retrieve funds from the contract. But using the collect from script txn function, we create and broadcast a transaction that attempts to spend the UTXOs currently associated with the contract to an address owned by the user, sending the transaction the user's wallets in this case. In the same way we provide the range when using the pay-to-script function, we do the same here. The transaction will only be valid within the specified slot range, this slot range here. In this case, our range goes from slot 15 onwards. Unlike last time, we don't need to provide the smart contract address, but the smart contract itself. That is the validator expression right here. The other argument we provide to this function is the redeemer script. This usually contains a proof that we are allowed to spend money from the contract. Since we are not performing any validation in the validator script, we have a dummy validator for now, we don't need to provide any proof. That's why our redeemer script, right here, contains just a unit. Note that although it's a unit, it still needs to be lifted. The last argument we need to provide is the transaction ID. This makes the action only try to spend the outputs associated with the given transaction ID. For example, Alice makes a contribution by sending transaction A. Bob sends another contribution in a transaction B. Now both Alice and Bob will receive refund, but to know which contribution is which, we ask users to provide a transaction ID that originated from their contribution. This way we know which coins are Bob's and which are Alice. Next, we need to register both the trigger and the event handler. At this point, we have defined both an event trigger and event handler, but they aren't registered yet. We will slightly modify the contribute action to register the handler to the trigger. So our modification in the contribute is here in the pay to script. We will change it for tx. It's a pay to script. We will delete the underscore here and range contract address, amount data script. Long message submitted contribution, okay. And now we will register the triggers here. Register refund trigger with a refund handler that takes ledger hash transaction. Take a look at the first change. We no longer use the pay to script underscore function, but the pay to script function without the underscore. This means that the resulting transaction, the one that was just created and broadcasted, will be given to use as a result. We capture this value in tx. Next, we add a call to the register action. This function takes two parameters, the event trigger and the event handler, to be registered. These are expressions we just created above. There is one more thing to note here. The tx value has the type capital TX, and we need a value of type TXID. It so happens that the ID of a transaction is just its hash, so we use the hash TX function from the ledger module on the TX value to produce the transaction ID we created for the refund handler we created. Now, let's simulate the contract. Let's compile the code. What is the error here? This one shouldn't be here. Compile. Here we need to register the MK functions that it's adding for our case. So we just need to create MK functions to register. MK functions. Contribute by there. We compile this. Here. Mismatch brackets. Font handler. It continues to be here. This is like a virus. Just delete it. There. Compile. Okay. Here, this TX is a TX ID. Compile. What's this? To complete. There you go. Okay. Now, let's say Alice got 100 ADA, Bob got 50, and Carol got 30. Each of these wallets will act as a contributor. So for each one of them, add a contribute action with multiple amounts. Well, let's say Alice contributes 11 ADA, Bob contributes 22, and Carol contributes 27 ADA. Now, we add a weight action of 10, and if we evaluate this simulation, we see here that they got all their ADAs. Why? In the log, we can see it. In the first slot, wallet 1 submitted a contribution. Let's add a weight action that it's longer and evaluate this one. And let's see, ignore this part. Here, the wallets are trying to claim their fund. And from the slot 15 onwards, the event trigger continues to happen. And this way you can see that the trigger was executed. So, in conclusion, in this lesson we learned about event triggers and event handlers. We use them to implement an automatic refund action for the user's contributions to the contract. In the next lecture, we will implement a new wallet action used to collect the whole raised amount in the contract, because currently the trigger only is useful to send money to the smart contract, and then starting on the slot 15, getting the trigger to return the raised amount.